Well, good morning, Tubinetos. Start off with a little shot of kvass here. Got me a brand new bottle. Monastyrsky brand from Ukraine. Looks like it's carbonated. Not supposed to be carbonated. Anyway, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has sure thrown the nuts in the fire, hasn't he? Demanding United Nations recognition of a Palestinian state from the Security Council, no less. And who are the only UN members on the planet who oppose this idea? Israel and the United States, of course. Israel's rejection is understandable, hypocritical, mind you, since it was recognized by the UN in 1948 under the same process. But Israel has a lot to answer for since then for its subsequent ethnic cleansing, and a Palestinian UN member would surely call into question its 1967 colonization of the West Bank and Gaza Strip, forever jeopardize the sneaking de facto annexation of these colonies as part of Eretz Israel, and expose its colonists to existential dangers from liberated natives. What truly stinks in this scenario is the United States' attitude. If you ever needed proof of the United States' false face as leader of the peace process, you have it here. Palestinian leaders and negotiators, and people throughout the Middle East generally, know the U.S. as a self-appointed judge that's been bought and paid for by one side of the conflict, posing as a disinterested conciliator trying only to do good, enough to make Jesus weep all over again, ain't it? Of course, the U.S. has stated from the outset it will veto any such vote in the UN Security Council because the U.S. is no impartial arbiter, but Israel's attorney, and like any good attorney before the bar, will defend its paying client to the best of its ability, including every delay, every twist of the facts, every misrepresentation possible to ensure justice is not done for its client's adversary. The Palestinians must go back to the negotiating table, the U.S. and Israel insist. Here is further proof again that the so-called peace process is, if not always was, a fraud. Merely a delaying tactic, a stall, to make sure the issue was never resolved, while Israel goes on its merry path, keeping possession of its ill-gotten gains. Of course, the Palestinians can bypass the Security Council altogether and put the issue before the General Assembly, in which case it's sure to pass. Either way, the U.S. is sure to have shit on its face. If it vetoes the resolution, it will do so in opposition to the majority of the Middle East peoples and leaders, at a time, thanks to the Arab Spring, when these people are in flux and their leaders are desperate for any approval from those they have misgoverned. If the U.S. does not stand in the way, specifically the Obama administration, Obama can kiss 2012 goodbye as the Jewish lobby will see to it he goes down as a one-term wonder. Forget about the wrath of the Tea Party. They may get a few scraps of flesh and a stray bone for their running dogs to gnaw on, but that's all that'll be left. Israel is trying its best to disassociate the Palestinian movement from the Arab Spring, but this is more disingenuous casuistry from Jerusalem that fools no one, not even the liars who concoct this propaganda. The original Arab Spring was the Intifada of 25 years ago in the Palestinian colonies. It's ironic, but unsurprising, that the one place where people are not allowed to be free is in the region's only Western-style democracy. It's like the rhetoric of J. Edgar Hoover, used to demonize Martin Luther King. American Negroes are already free simply by virtue of being U.S. citizens, hence the civil rights movement is a fraud and a national security threat. One will expect the likes of Netanyahu and his American ass-kissers to repeat this, but for the first black, truly African-American president, named Barack Hussein Obama, to follow along is a real spit in the face to Dr. King and shows just whose side Obama has taken. So what should the Palestinians do when the UN vote is taken and the U.S. bullies and bribes and hissy fits until it gets its way and sabotages the legitimate demand for recognition? This is a public YouTube video. So, good stuff. I'm not going to advocate violence, but to those Palestinians in the U.S. or abroad who might chance upon this little video, I hope you will do all in your power to make the Israeli occupation regime as morally uncomfortable as possible, and embarrass the U.S. before the United Nations and the world at large. But Azov, if the Pals get their state, what about the Israeli settlers, the Jewish settlers, just like you mentioned a moment ago? Without the Israeli armed forces on the ground to protect them, it'll be Bosnia on the Jordan or just the Kosovo Strip. Well, hasn't the Likud government in Israel been preaching transfer for decades? How about if Arabs in Israel were traded for Jews in the colonies? Purely voluntary, of course, with those choosing to stay put free to do so under majority rule. That seems only fair. But then what has fairness ever had to do with any of this? I encourage all Palestinians, whether in their homeland or in the diaspora of the Nakba, to remember Gandhi's words about the foreign occupation of his homeland. They must humiliate us to control us, because they are masters in someone else's home. To such rule, subversion must be our watchword, and treason our creed. Thus, treason to the plans of Israel and subversion to the wilds of Washington is not only the right thing in the abstract, but a duty for action. Hello? David Ben-Gurion? What brings your voice out of the mist of time today? To remind our viewers that, sure, Israel got itself recognized by the UN with just such a move, and with the help of the USA. But we have to keep in mind the world was a very different place then in 1948 than it is now. Because then the right people were in charge.